All right, briefly at the Finance Committee meeting prior to this session, we discussed the West, the new commuter rail service, some metrics around the performance of that service, projections about next year's ridership and expenses. We're talking to the railroad about managing better some of the expenses. It's been in the news a bit about the cost per rider, and there was agreement that the cost per rider in our calculations was around $17 a ride. That's the projection. So then we talked about fuel hedging and the required accounting standards around the fuel hedging program and how that would be expressed in our financials, and kind of summarized what we did and why we did it. Wanting predictability in terms of our fuel costs over time was the prompting reason. Of course, we were in a much different time, but those pretty much occupied most of the session for the Finance Committee today.
Okay. Questions? Very well. Thank you. General Manager's report. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. First, we are just 31 days away from today for the opening of the Green Line, our fifth MAX line between Clackamas County, the Clackamas Town Center, and Portland State University. As you know, that it has two different legs of that. That is the one along Clackamas Town Center to Gateway, the I-205 leg, and then once coming off the steel bridge on the west side of the river, the new alignment that goes down toward Union Station, the Greyhound bus, and then comes on 5th and 6th Avenues up to Portland State University. There's finishing work that's just being done along 5th and 6th Avenues. If you've been along that alignment, you see that there is more art that's going in, that the shelters are having their final glass put in throughout it, the caulking being done, and various other things. So that we're obviously pleased with the work of our contractors, and feeling it's going to be a great addition to the system-wide activity. As you know, that on August 30th, the actual yellow line, which currently goes from the existing alignment up to the Galleria and turns around there, will in fact begin traversing on 5th and 6th Avenues as is intended, and then 2 weeks later, on the 12th of September, we will actually end up having the new Green Line opening ceremonies, and all will be there. We hope you all will be able to join us. This past week, diesel prices were at $3.03 per gallon for the fiscal year that began July 1st. We're actually about $2.99 per gallon right now. Ridership, we had 8.5 million trips taken on buses, MAX and West during July. This is down about 8% over the previous July before the recession. And don't forget, last July we were running just about that $3.75 per gallon price of gasoline, going up even further in August, up to about $4. We can certainly see the effect of the recession on our ridership. Again, historically, transit ridership follows the employment rate, but lags them by a few months. That's exactly what we are seeing here, and have seen that be the case throughout the nation. So with the second highest rate of unemployment in the nation in Oregon, and if you even look at the issue of around the cost, the unemployment rate, when it looks at people who are part-time employees seeking full-time employment, or those who have given up, the Oregon region is the highest in the nation. And again, that's being reflected in our ridership. It doesn't come as a surprise. Obviously, we'd still like to be able to see lots of people using us. Lastly, I would focus some on the stimulus projects. We're seeing more and more of our projects are continuing to be able to move forward. We've completed a handful of projects, and this week we are beginning the $1.5 million Southgate Park and Ride project. They're on McLaughlin, just north of Milwaukee. This work will include the construction of 329 parking spaces and will allow hiring 11 workers and preventing 8 layoffs. Again, the stimulus projects are, from our perspective, obviously most important to be able to put people back to work who would have either been laid off or had been laid off, and also building essential infrastructure. For us, that park and ride will be an important service. It allows us to be able to reroute some of our buses from laying over in downtown Milwaukee. And likewise, over time, as the opening of the Port Milwaukee Light Rail would come after 2015, that location will have less value as a park and ride, but it will serve for what we long-term need, and that is a base for our lift operations in the southern part of our region, and that will be that will be an ideal location for them. The park and ride itself will be complete by the end of November. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or about the delegated authority report as well.
Yeah, just a comment, Fred. I see where the President signed the Supplemental Appropriation Act, which allows us to use some stimulus money for operating costs. So that should be a positive for our operation.
Actually, because of the nature of one category of where grants were able to be utilized, and that is in preventative maintenance, we had that ability by being able to utilize dollars from stimulus into preventative maintenance and essentially using those dollars. So this was very important to a number of transit properties across the country. Because of our nature, it didn't make a difference, but because we were essentially able to do much of the same thing already. But it's very important across the country. This is an important requirement.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.